वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste and a hearty welcome to one and all for today's 7th session of Atma Bodha. 21st January was Swami Vivekananda Jayanti and 23rd happened to be the Jayanti of Subhash Chandra Bose. Kindly bear with me. I will briefly mention a few words of these great divine persons of Bharat. Swami Vivekananda was born as Narendra Datta on January 12, 1863. He was inclined towards spirituality from a very young age. He was a devoted Sishya of Pujya Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and was ordained as Swami Vivekananda. He introduced Sanatana Dharma to the Western world with his speech at the Parliament of World's Religion in Chicago in 1893. He is credited with raising interfaith awareness and promoting the idea of universal brotherhood. He founded the Ramakrishna Mission in 1897. Subhash Chandra Bose was born on January 23, 1897. He was influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda and considered him as his spiritual guru. He served as a prominent leader in the Indian National Congress and later as its president in 1938 and 39. He formed the Indian National INA in 1983 to fight against the British rule and issued the famous call Delhi Chalo and established the Azad Hind government. Fondly known as Netaji, his contribution to India's independence movement are celebrated and his birthday is observed as Parakram Divas. His dedication and leadership continue to inspire many. Let us respectfully remember these great personalities of Bharat. Thank you. Atma Bodha, or self-knowledge, is a profound text composed of 68 verses written in the 8th century by Bhagavad-pada Adi Shankaracharya to guide seekers towards realizing their true nature and attain moksha by shedding ignorance. In the first shloka, eligibility to study Atma Bodha is defined. In shlokas 2, 3, and 4, stating that Jnanam alone is important, he denigrates Jivatma and Jiva. Then explains Brahma Tattvam, Satyam Gnanam Anantam. Then we learn Jagat Mithyatvam. Hence, Jivatva Nirakarana, Jagat Nirakarana, and Brahma Siddhi are completed in shlokas up to 10. The teaching may be over, but to help seekers like us understand these teachings, the 10 shlokas are elaborated up to shloka 29. Today, our teachers, Srimati Indumati, Dr. Sundar, Dr. Divakar, will explain verses from 28 to 31. The session will be moderated by our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, who will, drawing from his vast knowledge, will give us complex concepts in a simple nutshell. Sri Venkatesh Prasad will help us recall the learnings from the shlokas of the previous verses. Over to Sri Venkatesh Prasad.
Thank you, sir. Hari Om, Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. In our previous session, we learned the topics how Atma is always Mukta, how is Atma changeless, who am I really, with the verses from 24 to 27. Let's revisit that learning briefly. Verse 24, always Mukta. Atmanaha Swabhavaha Sachidananda Nitya Nirmalata. The Swabhavaha of the Atma of both Gnani and Agnani is Shuddha. We can understand Sat, Chit, Ananda and Nirmala or Nitya Sat, Nitya Chit, Nitya Ananda, Nitya Nirmala. Now, to illustrate the point, Shankar Bhagavad Pada gives an example. Arkasya Prakashaha. Just as Prakashaha, that is light, is the very nature of Surya. Arkaha means Surya. Toyasya Shaityam. The Swabhavaha of water is coolness. Then Agnehe Ushnata. Heat of the Agni. All these are Swabhavaha. It is never absent in them. Similarly, Shuddhi is there always in Atma. Here, Shankaracharya says that before the Adhyasaha, Atma is Shuddham. After the Adhyasaha is over, Atma is Shuddham. During the Adhyasam also, Atma is Shuddham only. Taking the Rajju Sarpa example, before superimposition there was rope. After superimposition is negated, there is rope alone. During superimposition also, Vedanta says, Sarpa Darshana Kalepi Tatra Rajjuhu Eva. Similarly, it is not that Agnana Kale Aham Baddhaha, Gnana Nantaram Aham Muktaha. Agnana Kalepi Atmaha Muktaha Eva. So, even at the time of samsara, he is Mukta only. With the next slide, let us go to the next verse. Verse 25. How is Atma changeless? We saw in the previous verse that Atma is Nitya Shuddha and remains unchanged. But Atma seems to be changing all the time. When every time a person says Janami, meaning I know, and since very knowledge is some kind of activity, Atma looks to be changing. When we say Aham Janami, Janami is a Kriya. Purva Pakshi says Aham is Atma and says Atma is changing. Shankaracharya says that Gnana Kriya is also a superimposition. Atma does not have Gnana Kriya. Atma is Gnana Swarupaha. When you say Aham Janami, the actual Kriya is taking place in the mind, and that Kriya is nothing but Vritti Vikaraha. So, nothing is happening to Atma, and Atma is changeless. Therefore, he says, Atmanaha Satchidamshascha. Atma has got Satamsham and Chitamsham, and Buddhi has got Vritti. Buddhi has got the modification, Ghatakara Vritti, Patakara Vritti, Vrikshakara Vritti, etc. And this Sat and Chit, which the Vritti gets, is borrowed from the Atma alone, and Vikaram is borrowed from the Vritti. So, joining both, Atmanaha Satchidamshascha Buddher Vrittiriti Tvayam Samyojya. So, confusing them together, an ignorant person says, Janami iti pravartate. What is the cause? He says, avivekena, because of confusion. Then, what will Gnani say? He will say, Aham Gnana Swarupaha Asmi. And I am the Sakshi of those vrittis, and I am not subject to change at all. Coming slide will take us to the next verse, verse 26. Who am I really? In this verse, Shankara says that neither the Atma is a knower, nor the Anatma is the knower. Atma cannot be a knower, because if Atma has to be a knower, it has to do the Kriya of knowing. It will mean Atma is Savikari. And since Atma is Nirvikari, Atma cannot be a knower. He says, Atmanaha Vikriya Nasti. Atma does not have any modification. Therefore, Atma cannot be a Gnata. Then can we say Buddhehe Gnana Bhavati? That is also not possible. Buddhehe Bodha na Jatu api. Buddhi does not have Chaitanyam at any time. Bodha here means Chaitanyam or Chit. Buddhi cannot know. That is why he says, Jivaha Sarvam Alam Gnatva. This Jiva, not knowing all these, that is Atmanaha Avikriyatvam, Buddhehe Jadatvam, Cha Agnatva, Gnata Drashta iti muhyati. Iti muhyati. Thus he is deluded. And at that time only he gets Vishva, Taijasa, prajna, etc. Antah prajna, bahish prajna, ghana prajna, all these are gnatritvam only. Then who am I? Na antar pragnam, na bahish pragnam, chaitanya swarupa eva. In the next slide, verse 27 teaches us to know myself as myself. Then I am nirbhaya. The original nature of Atma is that is not a gnata, gnana swarupaha aham. Gnana swarupe mai gnatritvam adhyaropitam tasmadeva samsaraha bhayam. So, gnana swarupe gnatritva adhyaropitam eva samsaraha. Because when I am gnana swarupaha, I am param atma. But when I am gnatra swarupaha, I am a jivatma. I have straight away descended from the higher pedestal of being a Paramatma to a lower pedestal of being a Jivatma. All because of one wrong claim. Instead of Gnana Swarupa, I use Gnatra Swarupa. That's all. Shankaracharya says now, Bhayam Vahet. The moment you become Gnata, there will be Bhayam, because the moment the Gnata comes, the other two will follow the Triputi. Gnata, Dhanam, Gneyam. That means, as Gnana Swarupaha Aham Advaitaha, as Gnatra Swarupaha, I have come down to Dvaitam. And once I have come down to Dvaitam, first of all, limitations will come. Parichinnatvam will come. Because the Gnata is limited by Gnanam and Gneyam. This is the fundamental problem. The process has to be reversed. Aham Gnata na asmi, Jivaha na asmi, Paramatma Gnana Swarupaha asmi. That is what he says. Na aham jivaha, that is na aham gnata. Then who am I? Paratmeti, Paraatma, and Parama Atma. It's Gnataschet. If I know myself as Paramatma, then Nirbhayaha Bhavet. Like what? He cites the well-known Drishtantaha, Rajju Sarpavat. Rajjutvena janati chet nirbhayam. Rajjum sarpatvena janati chet sabhayaha. If rope is known as snake, there is a bhayam. If rope is known as rope, there is nirbhayam. Similarly, I need not acquire anything new. I have to know myself as myself. Then I am nirbhaya. Let's continue study of Atma Bodha with next 4 verses in today's session. Hari Om. Thank you.
Sadashiva-samarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om. We are studying the fundamental topics in Vedanta. Right now we are covering the various sadhanas. Sadhanas are various spiritual practices which help us to reach our goal, the sadhyam. And the sadhana for today is Jnana Yoga. What is Jnana Yoga? Exactly what we are doing now. Whenever we are involved in a traditional process of learning about God, who is God? What is my true nature? Why is there so much suffering in the world? Is there a way to get out of suffering? What is this being a Jivan Mukta? So whenever we inquire and work on all these topics, this is what is called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga involves scriptural wisdom from a qualified teacher. And whenever there are doubts, to be able to clarify all these doubts. And finally, to be able to integrate these spiritual wisdom in our daily life. A little more elaboration of what is Jnana Yoga. Few terms like what is Brahman. Brahman is a Vedantic term for the formless form of God. What is Atma, which is my true nature? How do I make a distinction between my real self, which is the Atma, and my not so real self, the Anatma, and the world around me, that is Atma, Anatma. So Jnana Yoga is a sadhana which helps me to gain self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is also called Atma Jnanam. Sometimes for a person who is not in this path, whenever we say any inquiry into who I am, it looks like so ridiculous. I know who I am because we know our biodata, we know our date of birth, we know so much information about ourselves. So we are not talking about the transactional I, which in Jnana Yoga context is considered as the lower I. While there is the lower I, which is this body-mind complex, according to Jnana Yoga, there is a higher I or Atma. Now, trying to understand the nature of this higher I is also called Atma Bodha, or this is the knowledge that we are working in. So what is the purpose of Jnana Yoga? The purpose is to attain to moksha. Again, we need to be very clear. What is this moksha? Is moksha possible for all of us? Moksha means freedom from bondage or freedom from dependence. Now, how do I acquire dependence? Now, all of us have been working on various purusharthas like dharma, artha, kama. So whenever we do any activity and we accomplish something, our very accomplishments can produce a certain bondage. According to our scriptures, the real goal is Parama Purushartha or Moksha. Dharma, Artha, and Kama are considered as secondary goals. So, in that context, what do you mean by what is the goal of Jnana Yoga? The goal of Jnana Yoga is to be a Jivan Muktaha. Jivan Muktaha means while in this body, while transacting through this body. Whenever I transact through this body, the limitations of this body will seem to be my limitations. And the limitations of my mind will seem to be my limitations. Therefore, all of us, when we function through the body, will experience limitations. But once we have Jnana Yoga, our understanding becomes clear that the limitations are the limitations of the body, the limitations of the mind. I am really limitless. There is a seeming limitation because of the body that I am so closely associated with. So for such a person, the mental state of such a person is unaffected by the presence or absence of people, objects, or situations. That is the state of being a Jivan Mukta or being free. Now, what are the indicators of a Jivan Mukta? Now, this is very nicely explained in the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer says, such a person, a Mukta Purusha, has the ability to accept a situation that cannot be changed. Now, we normally hear of this phrase, what cannot be cured must be endured. Swami Anubhavananda has got a nice improvement on it. He says, what cannot be cured must be enjoyed. Whatever we have to do it joyfully. So this is the nature of a Jivan Mukta, because you will experience certain situations in our daily life which cannot be changed, and I have to learn to live with it. Can I learn to work with it cheerfully? And this is a joyful acceptance of things that cannot be changed. On the other hand, there are many situations which we cannot tolerate, and which is within our purview to change. And it requires a lot of courage. It may mean also hurting people with whom we are working with, but it takes a certain courage to do that. So a Jivan Mukta has the courage to change the things that can be changed, and most importantly, the wisdom or the discretion to know what is that which can be changed and what cannot be changed. The next question is, okay, now I know what is Jnana Yoga, what is the goal of Jnana Yoga. How do I get Jnana Yoga? Now the answer is, how do I get any knowledge? To get any knowledge, I need to use an instrument of knowledge. Now, these are new terms for us to understand. What do you mean by instrument of knowledge? For example, I'm seeing a computer screen in front of me. Now, how do I read what is there? Because of my eyes. So I'm using an instrument. I'm using my eyes, and my eyes are using my mind. So my mind and my eyes are all called instruments of knowledge. So to get any knowledge, we use our sense organs, we use our mind. And in Sanskrit, the instrument of knowledge is called a pramana. This term we should remember. A pramana is an instrument of knowledge. So we have got 5 sense organs, and through these 5 sense organs, I get all the knowledge that I need to be able to interact in the world. But there is a problem. These 5 sense organs and the mind also is very useful to study the world around me. But there is a problem sometimes if I have to study myself. For example, my eyes cannot see myself. And if my eyes cannot see myself, I have to use another instrument. For example, I make use of a mirror. And through the mirror, I'm able to see my own eyes. So too, when it comes to knowledge of my real self, which is other than the body, I have to use a mirror-like instrument of knowledge. And that mirror-like instrument of knowledge is what we are currently studying. The Vedas, also called the Shabda Pramana. Our scriptures are like mirrors. And our teachers help us to hold the mirror in such a way that we are able to use this instrument of knowledge to be able to realize I'm not this limited body-mind complex, but I am something limitless. So for that, this is the 6th instrument of knowledge called the Shastra Pramanam or the Shabda Pramanam. Now there is another term called Apaurusheya. Purusha means human being. Purusha, all of us have got the 5 sense organs and the mind. But if you are using the 6th sense organ, that is what is called the scriptures. So Jnana Yoga involves a technique by using the scriptures, and it cannot be done independently. I will tell you why. What is the problem if we study it independently? We necessarily have to use the help of a guru, because moksha is not an ordinary accomplishment. It cannot be accomplished through time. It cannot be accomplished through effort. It is not an event. And very strangely, unlike everything else which I have to do, moksha is something that I don't have to do anything about. That is why they say moksha is not a sadhyam. It is a siddha vastu. It is something that is always there, but it is covered, and therefore I need the Guru and Shastras to discover or to remove the cover, and that is the importance of a Guru. And a Guru is possible. Now, there are certain methods for that. We have to go through reverence. That is why there is a nice mantra. Pariksha lokan karmachitan brahmana nirvedyam ayat nastik akrit kritena tat vignartam sa gurumeva abhigachet samitpanihi shrotriya brahmanishta. Very reverentially, I carry a samitpani. Samitpani means when I go to a guru, I have to carry something with me. And that's something that I offer to a guru. My guru is Shri. Shri means my guru is rich. He has Lakshmi with him. Now, he does not need anything, but I still have to take something. And what do I have to take? I have to take something which I have, which my guru does not have. Traditionally, a guru is an enlightened person, and an enlightened person is egoless. And I have to get over my ego, and the Samitpani represents the ego, which I drop at the guru's place and very reverentially become available. Now, there are various Upanishads which help us to teach, and there is one Upanishad which specifically tells us about the importance of a guru, where in the Kenopanishad, the student goes to the teacher and the teacher says, now I have a problem in teaching you because I do not know Brahman as an object. And because, see, I can teach you, for example, as doctors, we teach people about the brain, about the heart. Now you can teach about anything that is an object. But how to teach about the very subject, yourself, not your body, mind, but the real self, the one who is seeing through your eyes. Now, this methodology of teaching is a very peculiar methodology. So the teacher in this Upanishad, the Kena Upanishad, says, I can't teach you the usual way, but I can teach you in a very peculiar way. And what is this peculiar way? Because normally we tend to objectify. Normally, whenever I study about Brahman or I study about Atma and I study about the glories of Atma, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Atma, I begin to think that Atma is something somewhere that I need to be able to realize through meditation or through some extraordinary experience. Now, this is what is called information experience dichotomy. Through the Guru, I have learned about Atma, but I have not experienced Atma. So, can I do some special form of meditation to get to know about the Atma? It is like normally when we study anything. For example, I'm traveling to USA and Canada, and one of the things in my itinerary is to visit the Niagara Falls. So before going to Niagara Falls, I check a book, or today we go onto um, uh, the net, and we will see on YouTube, you will see various images and drone pictures of how the Niagara looks from the Canadian side, the US side, how it looks from the bottom of the falls, and so on. Now, whenever I use various instruments of knowledge, I get some information. And one day, when I actually am in front of the Niagara Falls, I have the experience, and thereby this information dichotomy is clarified. And this is how we get normal forms of knowledge. And that is how we also think that self-knowledge or Atma Bodha is like that. I have to study about Atma. So go to the Guru and learn all about the Atma, and then ask him what are the special practices or various sadhanas that I need to do to experience the Atma. Now, Atma is not an object to be experienced. I can experience any object, but when it is myself, there is no way I can have an experience of myself, because the Atma is none other than me. And therefore, you have this problem of what is called information experience dichotomy. And because of this problem, the teachers have to use certain peculiar methods so that we don't begin to think that Atma is some object apart from me. So, how do we do that? Jnana Yoga is certainly not an easy science compared to all. The question is asked, is Jnana Yoga easy or Jnana Yoga is difficult? It depends upon, do I have Jnana Yogyata? Do I have the eligibility for Jnanam or not? Now, if I have the eligibility for Jnanam, Jnana Yoga becomes susukam, Sri Krishna will say in the Bhagavad Gita, extremely easy. It becomes very easy. How do I get the eligibility? Now, in the previous classes, we learned about Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. Those who have done Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga for a period of time get a certain amount of Jnana Yogyata. Then I come to Jnana Yoga under the Guru. The Guru will give me that knowledge. And subsequently, I do another practice which is called meditate on this knowledge, or Nidithyasanam. Then the Jnanam becomes a Jnana Nishta. So therefore, Jnana Yoga involves 3 steps called Shravanam, Mananam, and Nidithyasanam. What are these 3 steps? Shravanam means very reverentially, through Shraddha, listening to a Guru. It is systematic and consistent listening to Vedantic scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a competent Acharya. So this is what is Shravanam. Mananam means when the teacher gives you all this information, there will be certain doubts. Now, I need to be able to clarify with my teacher, I fully understand what you say, but there is a certain doubt in my heart. And the teacher clarifies these doubts. Only when all the doubts are clarified, if there is some doubt, there is a glass of water in front of me, I'm about to drink, but somebody puts an idea, I have a doubt that it may not be drinking water. Now, if there is a doubt, am I going to consume? am I going to consume any knowledge if there is any doubts? Therefore, mananam is an important process where I clarify all the doubts and I'm convinced about this knowledge. Through Shravanam and Mananam, I get Jnanam about my true nature. Then it takes months, it takes years, it takes decades when I need to be able to internalize this teaching. It is a whole process of being able to transform the intellectual knowledge into emotional strength. And that is what is called Nididhyasana. Now, as I told you, when you go to Jnana Yoga, we are going as an ignorant person, and the teacher is a knowledgeable person. The teacher is a jnani. The teacher knows his true nature, that he is not an ordinary human being. The teacher knows that he is a spiritual being temporarily playing the role of a human being. He also knows our true nature, but then he has a difficulty. If he tells you the truth, we are going to reject. This is the problem. The teacher knows that all of us are seekers of truth, but there is one problem. Even though we want the truth, we are not ready to accept the truth as it is. The moment truth is presented as it is, the first reaction is one of rejection. What is our teaching? I'm not sure if I can tell you right now, but I will still tell you, because the teacher will tell you that which you cannot experience, that Brahman is the only reality. That which world that you see, including your body and mind, is not so real. And the truth is, you are that. Now, it becomes very difficult to accept. So the teacher has to do a certain technique, has to do a certain prakriya. And what are these? There are various kinds of prakriyas. I will give you one example of prakriya and how a teacher is able to convince a student. There were a group of 10 students who took permission from their guru to go across the river because there was something interesting happening on the other side of the river. The guru entrusts one of them as to the leader to ensure that they go safely and come back. The problem was when they were coming back, the river was at spate and it was difficult for them to come. While going, they could wade across. While coming, they had to swim across. And once they came back, they were very anxious to see that all of them had come. And they began to count each other. And in their anxiety, they were able to count everybody else except themselves. And they came to a quick conclusion that the 10th man is missing. Every effort at counting, each one consistently counted everybody else except themselves. And then they began to lament and wail that Dashamaha Nasti, the 10th man is not there. When they reported to the Guru looked around and found that all 10 of them were there. And he reassured them, Dashamaha Asti, the 10th man is there. Then, who is the 10th man? Comes the next question. So the teacher asks them, the leader of them, to count each one of them. And he counts 9 of them. Then he points to the person who was counting and he says, Tatutvam Asi, that one that you are looking for is yourself. Now, these are called prakriyas. These are various techniques. The teacher does there are various types of prakriyas: Atma, Anatma, Viveka, Drik, Drishya, Viveka, Avastatraya, Viveka, and so on. So that is the whole excitement. The excitement is that one day all of us in this life should become a Jivan Mukta. Through Shravanam, through Mananam and Nididhyasanam, we become a Jivan Mukta. A Jivan Mukta, as I already said, is a state of being enlightened even though embodied, a state of realization that we are not ordinary human beings having an occasional spiritual experience. We are divine beings. We are I am Atma Brahma. This is the claim of the Mahavakya. I am Brahman. I am that. I am the greatest I could possibly be. I am limitless. I am Sat Chit Ananda, functioning through a limited body-mind complex for the time being, as long as my prarabdha goes on. This is the objective and this is the goal of Jnana Yoga. Our first speaker today will be Srimati Indumati. Induji, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the previous shloka, it was mentioned that one should know the Atma to get freedom. Now the question is, who will know the Atma? Because to know the Atma, Atma will have to become the object of knowledge. And if the Atma has to become the object of knowledge, we require a subject, which means the Anatma has to become the subject, which has to know the Atma. Anatma can be broadly classified into three categories: the eternal world, the physical body, and the mind. Will all these three know the Atma is the question. Bhagavad Pada Sri Shankaracharya says all these three do not work because all are Anatma, being inert by themselves. Jada Anatma cannot know the Chetana Atma. Next, therefore, the world, body, and mind can never be the knowers of Atma because they are all Jadam. On the other hand, these three are known by the Atma because Atma is the Chetanam. Atma being the Chetanam, it is ever the known. Anatma being Jadam, they are ever the known. Atma can never become a known object. It can never be an object of knowledge. This is the essence of the shloka. In the next slide, we have the shloka which goes like this. Atmavabhasayatyeko buddhyadinindriyanyapi deepo gatadivat swatma jadairstairnavabhasyate. Atma avabhasayati. Atma illumines the entire anatma like buddhyadhin indriyani api. The entire anatma consisting of the world, that is buddhyadhini, this mind, and indriyanyapi, the sense organs. Atma illumines all of them which are jadam in nature. Atma knows the anatma, but anatma cannot know the Atma because Anatma is Jadam. Bhagavad Pada Sri Shankaracharya says, Ekaha Atma. Atma is only one. Buddhyadini avabhasayati. Taihi jadaihi na avabhasyate. Atma is never known, objectified, illumined by those inert body-mind-world complex. Buddhi Indriyani themselves borrow illumination from the Atma. They cannot lend illumination to the Atma. Atma shines because Atma is Swayam Prakashaha. This one non-dual Atma avabhasyati illumines all the four Antakaranam which we see in the next slide. Buddhi, Manas, Chittam, and Ahankaranani. And not only that, Indriyanyapi, also the Bhakya Karanani, the external organs. So the illumined objects are many. The illuminator is only one. In the next slide, we see Kshetram Kshetri Tata Kritsnam Prakashayati Bharata, says Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. As one sun illumines the entire universe, the Atma illumines the whole Kshetra. That is, Kshetrajna is Ekaha, Kshetram is Anekam. Therefore, Swayam Prakasha Padarthaha Aprakasha Padarthan Prakashayati. It cannot be the other way round. In the next slide, we see the illuminous Atma illumines the non-illuminous Anatma, and the non-illuminous Anatma cannot illumine the illuminous Atma. Therefore, Deepaha Gatadivat, just as a lamp is ever the illuminator of the objects like pot, the lamp is never illumined by the object like pot. To conclude, Atma avabhasayati buddhyadini indriyani and taihi jadaihi. Atma na avabhasayate. Atma is the illuminator and never the illumined. This is the definition of Swayam Prakashatvam and is called self-effulgent. Therefore, we should see that and remember that Chaitanyam alone is the subject and body or matter alone can be the object. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Induji, for a very nice explanation of this particular verse, where we are trying to learn about the illuminator of Atma. Now, when we are in the process of Atma, Anatma, Viveka, what we do is Mano, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, Naham. I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am not this ego. I keep negating. Now, when I negate my body, I negate my mind, I negate my Ahankara, then who is there to know the Atma? Because I know now, if I'm here in the process of learning Atma Bodha, somebody should know, but I have negated myself. Now, the answer to this is Atma is self-illumined. It does not need any external illuminator to know, illuminate itself. For example, now if I had to look around and get knowledge about all these things, if I want to know if somebody has come or not, I have to see, I have to hear, I have to use my sense organs. But the question to all of you is, are you here now? Are you conscious? See, I am conscious, I am existent. Whenever you say I am, only a conscious person will say I. The stable cannot say I. So only a conscious person says I. I know, I don't have to tell anybody has to, I don't need to feel myself to say I am. This knowledge, I am, does not need my mind or sense organs. And who is this who's saying I am? Now this is Atma. Not only this is Atma, this is limitless Atma. And anything limitless is Paramatma. There is only one all-pervading limitlessness. And this is I am Atma. This I am Atma does not need my mind, sense organs to illumine itself. And that is why through all these teachers, we have to get to know Atma Bodha. Now, there are two kinds of knowledge. When we were studying Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra, we studied. One is called Samanya Jnanam. You can keep your eyes closed for a moment. Even though you have closed your eyes, you are still aware of the fact that you are there. Your existence is there, you are conscious. You're not conscious of any particular object, but you know for one certain that you are there. I am conscious and I'm existent. This is called Samanya Jnana. When you open your eyes and use your sense organs, you get so much other knowledge. That is called Vishesha Jnanam, or that limited knowledge that comes from these interactions. For example, you look at the room around that you are. You see so many objects. Why do you see so many objects? Because of the light. Because of the light. Now, to see the light, what do I need? The light is self-illumined. This I am, this consciousness need not be illumined by Mano, Buddhi, Hankara, Chittani, Naham. I may negate all of them, but still I know I am. Why? Because the illumined can never illumine the illuminator. The illuminator, I am, illumines everything and not the other way around. And this knowledge is not an event, it happens all the time. Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. In every experience, can I come in touch with the experiencer? So, this is the whole exercise that we need to do. What do I need to do? And I am, there's nothing that I need to do. You have to learn that, and through this prakriya, through this technique, when you negate, Mano, Buddhi, Hankara, Chittani, go on negating. Ultimately, you will come to the I am who cannot be negated and realize that I am is not an ordinary limited I, that is the Vishesh, that is the Samanya Jnanam, that is Paramatma. The same thing will be elaborated a little more. We listen to Dr. Sundar in the next two verses. Dr. Sundar, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Swabodhe Nanya Bodhe Cha Bodharupatayatmanaha Nadi Pasyanya Deepecha Yata Svatma Prakashane. In this next slide, I will try to simplify this verse by separating the sandhi and then arranging the words in a prose order. We see that in this verse, the verb is not there. It is implied and it has to be supplied, which is called adhyahara. Anya bodhecha na asti. Desire or requirement for awareness or vrittijnanam of another is not there. That is the basic meaning here. Then we add some questions. When and whose desire for awareness is not there, and why such awareness is not there? When we ask such questions, we see the answers in the shloka are Swabodhe, in one's own awareness, Atmanam, of the Atma, Anna Bodhecha Nasti. There is no desire or requirement for awareness of another. And the reason is given in the word Bodha Rupataya. That is because in one's awareness of Atma, that Atma which is of the nature of awareness itself, there is no desire for awareness of another. Thus far, it appears quite cryptic. So Adi Shankaracharya gives a brilliant example to make us understand this. And the basic sentence for the example goes thus. Again, the verb is not there. We have to supply it. Anya deepecha na asti. Desire for another lamp or light is not there. Whose desire? A lamp's desire for another lamp, svatma prakashane, in illuminating itself is not there. Now this sloka can be understood well with this example. Adi Shankaracharya's example says, obviously we don't need a torchlight to show the light in the lamp. In the same manner, we don't need awareness to be brought in from an external entity to show the nature of awareness which intrinsically belongs to the Atma. Let us dwell a little bit deeper into the understanding of the shloka. Earlier in this text, Pujya Swamiji brought to us the understanding of vrittijnanam. Whenever we get the knowledge of any object in this world, that form of knowledge is called as vrittijnanam. He gave us the example of pot. Pot jnanam is ghata jnanam. Ghata jnanam happens when there are two factors. One is mind in the form of thoughts take the form of pot, which is called as ghatakara vritti. Still the ghatakara vritti is jadam, it is insentient. Then a second factor comes in. My consciousness, a small part of it in the form of reflected consciousness or chidabhasa or pratibimba chaitanyam also takes the form of the pot, that is called ghatakara chaitanyam. This combination of ghatakara chaitanyam and ghatakara vritti makes it a sentient thought, and I come to know that this is a pot. What this shloka is trying to tell is that this process is okay for all the objects in this material world, but does not apply to Atma. Why is this so? Swamiji brought about certain fundamental differences between Atma being of the nature of Swarupa Jnanam as against the knowledge of any object which is called Vritti Jnanam. Now the differences, if we see in a tabular column, is Swarupa Jnanam is natural, it is intrinsic, it is constantly present with him. What Sir mentioned as Pratibodha Viditam. Whereas the Vritti Jnanam is not natural in the sense that it comes and goes whenever an object comes in my area of knowledge. The other differences Swamiji pointed out was Swarupa Jnanam is objectless. It is a natural sense of awareness in the background, whereas Vritti Jnanam belongs to different objects. And we have already seen that Swarupa Jnanam does not require the operation of the mind or the senses, whereas Vritti Jnanam requires the operation of mind and senses. In all objective knowledge, Atma lends a small part of it as Pratibimba Chaitanyam to make that awareness to come. Since Atma is the nature of Swarupa Jnanam, since it is consciousness itself, why is there a need for a reflection of this Atma to shine light on itself? That is what this shloka means. In this next slide, we see a interesting seeming contradiction that Swamiji brings in to make us a better understanding about this. At the beginning of this text, it was said that although my nature is one of consciousness, I have Swarupa Jnanam, yet I suffer from samsara, and to attain to moksha purushartha, I need Vritti Jnanam in the form of this text of Atma Bodha. Whereas in the shloka, it is mentioned that Atma does not require Vritti Jnanam to illumine itself. So Swamiji reconciles this contradiction, which is seeming to say that Vritti Jnanam is not needed to illumine the Atma. However, it is needed to remove the ignorance that my true nature is one of Atma, which does not need to be illumined. So in other words, Vritti Jnanam, like statements like Aham Brahmasmi, are not required to throw light or illumine the Atma. Atma is self-illumined. But it is required for Ajnana Nivritti to show me that this constant sense of awareness that I have is extraordinary. It is infinite. It is all pervading. It is immanent and transcendent in every gram of matter. So that knowledge about myself I didn't have. And Vritti Jnanam in the form of this text or statements like Aham Brahmasmi make me aware that my consciousness is of the nature of the very substratum of this world. So therefore, when we say Vritti Jnanam is required, automatically we say that scriptures are required, gurus are required, classes like these are required, even though Atma is of the nature of Swarupa Jnanam. We now move on to this next shloka. Nishidhya nikhilopadin neti neti iti vakyatah vidyat aikyam mahavakyai jivatma paramatmanoho. In this next slide, let us do the same exercise of separating the sandhi and rearranging in prose order. Unlike the previous shloka, in this shloka, the subject is not mentioned. This happens because of the poetic license of fitting it in a Anushtup Chandas. So it is implied and we have to supply it here. And looking at the context, this being a teaching text, we can say that the subject, the appropriate word could be Sishya. So in the simplest, this sentence is Sishyaha Vidyad Aikyam. The student must know the oneness. But before he knows the oneness, you will notice that there is a secondary verb which puts certain precondition before the student knows the oneness. The secondary verb is nishidhya. Nishidhya means to intellectually negate. So what has to be intellectually negated and from what it has to be negated when we ask the questions? Nishidhya nikhilopadin. So the student, before knowing the oneness, he should intellectually negate all the upadis. From what he has to negate it thus? Neti neti iti vakyataha. So he should do this intellectual negation from scriptural statements like neti neti, not this, not this. Neti neti is an expression borrowed from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where intellectually there is negation of upadis in the form of vyasti as well as samasti, or in the form of manifest and unmanifest. Therefore, it is quoted 2 times as neti neti. Also, there is another word, mahavakyaihi. He should know this aikyam by or with Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi. Sishya Vidyad Aikyam, that Aikyam is whose Aikyam? Jivatma Paramatmanoho Aikyam. So in total, the meaning of the shloka is the student, having negated all the upadhis with scriptural statements like neti neti, by or with the help of Mahavakyas, must know the oneness between Jivatma and Paramatma. Now in this next slide, let us go to the discussion regarding the adhyasa brought in by Pujya Swamiji in the earlier part of this text. So our core nature is one of Brahman or Atma, and we have already seen through several of the previous shlokas in the earlier classes that there are upadhis, which are manifestations of Maya, which prevent me from reaping the benefit of my true nature. Now, as is symbolized here at the time of birth itself, Maya, which forms all the upadhis, which has got two Shaktis, first of which being the Vikshepa Shakti, it creates Sharira and Prapancha. This is a projection, a false superimposition, an error, or an imagination. This Swamiji calls as Prathamika Adhyasa or primary Adhyasa. Mere projection, imagination, superimposition is not harmful if we know that it's a projection, if we know the substratum being Brahman. But then the second Shakti of Maya comes along, it wields the substratum, that is my true nature of being Brahman. And at this point, there is mutual transfer of attributes, tadatmyam or anyonya adhyasa, that happens. Reality belongs to Brahman and limitations belong to Sharira and Prapancha. These attributes get mutually transferred. The reality of Brahman is transferred to the Sharira and Prapancha, and the limitations of them are seemingly transferred to Brahman. This is called as Dvitiya Adhyasa or secondary Adhyasa by Swamiji, and this is the cause of suffering and sorrow. Now, having described the upadhis, the shlokas in the text then go on to show us how to free ourselves of these coverings. So, as we shall see in the next slide, what this shloka is doing is, in the first and the second quarter, the secondary adhyasa, which is called as Tula Vidya, that knot is removed or it is opened. So Nishidya, having intellectually negated Nikhilopadin, all the upadhis, through scriptural statements like Neti Neti, essentially we students are doing Atma Anatma Viveka. Now I know that my true essence is one of Nirguna Nirvikara Nirvikalpa Chetana Atma, and I am different from Saguna Savikara Savikalpa Jada Anatma. So with the going of Tula Vidya, I am no longer suffering from the superimposition of the snake, as in the case of rope and snake example. But Swamiji says that this is the mere first step because there are still two entities, Atma and Anatma, and this is Dvaita. And then, as seen in the next slide, the third and the fourth quarters of this sloka go the second step, where Advaita is established. How is this? This happens in the third and fourth quarter, Vidyad Aikyam Jivatma Paramatmanoho. So now in the previous slide, we had 4 rows. Now I am not just that Atma with the Nirvikara, Nirvikalpa, all that. I am Atma who am the Karanam, and I am different from the Anatma, which is Karyam. The moment Karana Karya Sambandha comes in, it is very clear with the clay and pot example that Karanam alone is. Karyam is not as good as not there, because if you remove the clay, there is no pot. If you remove the gold, there are no ornaments. If you remove wood, there is no furniture. So with water and ocean. So with the third and fourth quarter, Dvaityam is negated and Advaitam is established and then Atma alone is. Thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sundar, for a very clear explanation of these two important verses. We are now studying Atma Bodha. Now, all of us have Samanya Jnanam. In spite of having Samanya Jnanam, that means in spite of being Atma, we are already that. But we still continue to be samsaris. We still have all the problems in the world, which means very clear. This Swarupa Jnanam, that means the fact that I am Atma cannot give me liberation. The fact that I am Atma by itself cannot give me happiness. To repeat it, merely possessing Swarupa Jnanam is not enough. We require some other knowledge. And that knowledge is the knowledge that that consciousness I am. In the last time when I spoke to you about Samanya Jnanam and Vishesha Jnanam. Samanya Jnanam is objectless awareness. Vishesha Jnanam is knowledge of a particular object. Now we have got the knowledge of Atma. Now I should have Vishesha Jnanam of Samanya Jnanam. That means I should be able to claim I am Atma, Brahma, which is of the nature of Nityaha. That means this body is Anitya, but I'm there from the very beginning. I will be there till the very end. This body is Ashuddha, but I am Shuddha. The body is of the nature of is Jada, and the body is bound, but I am free. This is the distinction that we need to have, and this is what is called subjective knowledge. Even though we are Atma Bodha we have not had until we have gone through these Atma Bodha classes. So Atma Bodha now becomes a Jnanya Jnanam. That means through Guru and Shastras, through a certain amount of effort, I have been able to discover that which is always there, that infinite process is myself. So Atma, so this Jnanam, what have I acquired? So I have acquired the Vishesha Jnanam of the Swarupa Jnanam. So Jnanam by itself is, I have acquired Vishesha Jnanam of Swarupa Jnanam. We come to the last verse for today, will be explained by Dr. Divakar. Dr. Divakar, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So from the verses 16 till 29, Atma Anatma Viveka is being talked about, and that was completed previously. And this is about the Tvam Pada Vichara. Tvam is about the individual self. Now, we have learned that I am the Swayam Prakasha Chetana. But there is still the Anatma, which is Jada. And that was beautifully explained by Dr. Sundar. As long as there is Atma, Anatma, Viveka, and we remain at that, Dvaitam is still existing. Yes, we have negated Anatma and claiming that I am Atma, but still that matter, that Dvaitam is existing. In order to reconcile with this, we need to have the understanding of the Kshetram and Kshetragna. Kshetram, Kshetragna, we know from Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter. Kshetram is the field for the Kshetragna, which is the Atma. So from the microcosmic level, one will have to go to the macrocosmic level also. Therefore, Tat Pada Vichara is a must. Nature of the God, knowing about it is a must. And this is when we understand that when we say Bhagavan, when we say God, God is a combination of Brahman and the Maya. So the word terminology used is Ishvara. So we know from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita also. So there we learn that Maya is inert, but Brahman is the sentient component. Therefore, Brahman is the Karanam for the Maya. So there the Karanam, Karya Karana Sambandha is brought about. Again, that was explained in the previous verse. So with this, we negate or we transcend the Dvaitam. So there is no Karyam, the effect, without the Karanam. Just like there is no table without the wood. There is no pot without the clay. So through this, we also remove the ignorance which is arising out of the Adhyasa. This is the Mahavakya, the Tattvamasi. The next slide we see. The essence, therefore, that whatever we see is Brahman plus the Upadhis, the Nama and the Rupa. And of course, the Nama Rupa does not exist different from the Brahman. We know again through the Vishwarupa Darshana. And this we have already covered, the clay and the relationship between the clay and the pot. And in essence, there is no pot without the clay. So the pot is actually of a lower order of reality, because the real Satyam in that example is the clay. Just like that, the Jagat or the Maya is a lower order of the reality. When we say Jagan Mithya, it does not mean it is unreal. One should not completely negate it. Although the Neti technique is being used here, one should not take it lightly. Sometimes Swamiji warns against this. When we say Neti, we might end up into a fatalistic thinking also. What it really means is that when we say Mithya Padartha doesn't have its own existence. Pot doesn't have its own existence without the clay. Maya doesn't have its own existence without the without Brahman. So Atmaiva idagam sarvam, Brahmaiva idagam sarvam is the Upanishadic statement. So the advantage of knowing this knowledge, of course, is that the samsara is gone, which is nothing but the moksha. The matter or the universe will not frighten us. So through the negation of the upadhis, neti, samasti prapancha, the macrocosmic maya, which is inert, and vyasti shariram, the anatma within the body, is negated. So what remains is the I, which is nothing but the atma. Jiva atma, parama atma, atmanoha aikyam vidyat. That we saw in the previous verse. Next slide, sir. So in this verse, avidyakam shariradi drishyam budbudavaksharam etad vilakshanam vidyaham brahma eva iti nirmalam. Next slide, sir. We'll see in the next slide the explanation for this. So in the previous verse, we saw that all the upadhis, nikilopadhin, is negated. Here in this verse, drishya nishidya, negation of the object of the experience, is elaborated. We know through Drik Drishya Viveka, another Prakarana Grantha by Vidyaranya, we know that the Drik is nothing but the seer, Drishyam is the seen. We have seen different layers of it. If I am seeing this screen currently, my eyes is seeing this. Therefore, my eyes is the drik, the computer screen is the drishyam. But if I analyze carefully, it is my brain where the information from the eyes is going and relaying. Therefore, my brain becomes the drik, eyes becomes the drishyam. And in fact, that information in the brain is through my mind. Therefore, mind becomes the drik, the seer, and the brain becomes the seen. And the ultimate seer, according to Shastras, of course, is the consciousness or the Brahman. The absolute seer is the Brahman or the Atma. So, Drishya Viveka, the seer and the seen. Drishyam is all that is objectified. Whatever is a seen is the objectified objectification from the subject. So the Vedantic law is yad drishyam tad jadam. All that is known is inert. There is only one absolute seer, that is the subject. All drishyam is avidya janyam. In other words, it is the matter principle. So we can call it Prakriti, Maya, or the Mula Vidya, which was covered also in the previous verse. So both at the macro and the microcosmic level, all the objects of experiences are Maya Janyam only. Yadyad drishyam tad sarvamapi Maya Janyam eva. Whatever is the object, whatever is the scene, they are all Maya Janyam only. So Shariradi, in this verse, Shariradi is used. So whatever is a product of the matter, at the microcosmic level, it is Shariradi. So we know that there are three shariras which are talked about through Tattva Bodha. We have seen this. So gross body, subtle body, and the causal body, as well as the Sukshma Sharira, all the Sukshma Shariras, the Antahkaranas, all of them are avidyakam. They are all born out of the Maya only. In fact, the other word for the Karana Sharira is also avidya. So it is all compared to what? Budbudavat. Budbudam means the bubble coming out of the water. In fact, Atma Bodha itself is well known for its similes, metaphors. Adi Shankaracharya uses brilliant metaphors in Atma Bodha. In fact, we have seen Budbudam previously also in the 8th verse, where the macrocosmic Maya is used and negated. So just like how the bubbles are impermanent, whatever which arises from the Maya is also impermanent, is the message which is being given here. Next line, sir. Next slide, rather. So we know that it is the Karana Sharira which is the source for the Sthula Sharira and the Sukshma Sharira. Whenever anybody dies, what leaves the body is the subtle body along with the Karana Sharira. So it is a Karana Sharira from which everything kind of comes out. We can compare this Karana Sharira to a bigger bubble. So one which has everything within that. But even that bigger bubble is also impermanent. Purandaradasaru has told in Kannada, Yarige yaruntu eravina samsara, neera melena gulle nijavalla hari. Although Purandaradasaru is a Dvaita proponent, he brings out the impermanence of this anatma quite a lot in his kirtanas. So, neera melena gulle. So that our anatma is impermanent. Again, the caution that Swamiji gives is impermanent doesn't mean you ignore it or take it lightly. We have to manage our body mind also very, very cautiously and carefully, because that is the only instrument we have in order to, even achieve the Brahma Vidya, even to kind of realize Brahma Vidya and lead our Jivan Mukta life. So the word used is Vilakshanam. So who am I? Ultimately, it is not the impermanent matter, but I am the Vilakshanam. Vilakshanam means that which is not Ksharam. So that which is opposite of Lakshanam, the nature of the Jadam. So Jadam is the insentient. All the Karana Sharira, Sukshma, and then Stula Sharira, all of them at a microcosmic level as well as macrocosmic level is not me. I am not the Maya Janyam. I am the Maya Adhishtanam. I am the substratum of the Maya, or the sentience towards the Maya. I mean, I am not the Avidya Janyam, but I am Avidyam Adhishtanam. I am not Ksharam. Instead, I am Aksharam. That which is, that does not perish. I am not Drishyam. I am not seen, but I am the seer. I am the Drik. I am not the Shariram, which is the Avidya Janyam. Next slide, sir. So this brings us to the final part. So if I am not that, what is this nature of me? If I am the Aksharam, my nature is that of Nirmalam. Aham Nirmalam Brahmaiti Vidyat. This is Drikrupa Aham. I am that Brahman alone. What type of Brahman is it? It is Nirmalam, without any impurities. And what is the fundamental impurity that we have? That is that of avidya or the Maya. I am neither the Maya Karanam Ksharapurusha, whatever the perceivable universe that is there, which is Ksharapurusha, and I am not the Maya, which is the Akshara Purusha, but I am the Uttam Purusha, which is the Brahman. We have studied this in the 15th chapter. Of course, this famous mantra from the Mandukya Upanishad, Nantah Pragnam na Bahish Pragnam. So talks about the neti components in the initial section. Just like that we have seen in the last two verses, there is neti in the first line, and then who am I is also talked about, the Swarupa Lakshan. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Devakar, for another very nice and clear explanation. Now, we all know that I am Atma, but then to integrate this, we now need a prakriya. And the prakriya that Atma Bodha is introducing is Drik Drishya Viveka. So the fundamental laws, whatever I see and experience is Drishyam, I am not that. So I am not the body, I am not the mind, Mano Buddhi Hankara Chittani Naham. Then what am I? Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. Now, that is why the next important subject that we would like to work after Atma Bodha will be this beautiful text called Drik Drishya Viveka. Shri Guru Bhyo Namah.
Hearty thanks to our dear Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, to all the speakers of the day for a wonderful session, and hearty thanks to all of the Vedantins who have joined us today. Friends, remember to join us at 6:45 p.m. on Monday, 27th January for the 63rd session of GIFT, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation, and benefit from the enlightening knowledge of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a life manual. Let us chant the Shanti Mantra and conclude today's session. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.